Hello, this is Heather Gerdes, and I am so stoked to be with Rick Burgess today. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Heather.
Give us a hello. Hello. So, we do a podcast. I talked to you about it. I'm usually interviewing folks with more of a marketing purview, but especially with my agency owner, interview guests, it always comes up sales. We're talking about sales cycles and client acquisition and ICPs and all of this. And I know me personally, I cannot talk about sales without thinking of Rick Burgess. And so, Rick, you're a Sandler sales trainer. I've
Correct.
been under your training for a long time whenever I can. Uh, and yeah, so maybe start by telling us a little bit about your story, how you got into sales training,
Okay. Okay.
and then we can dig into some meaty questions.
All right. All right. So my background, sales and sales leadership, the majority of my career, entrepreneurship as well. So started a couple of companies and a couple of divisions within companies. During that time, not early career, but we'll call it early mid-career, I discovered Sandler. I got into sales, I think the way a lot of people do. They didn't think they were going to be in sales. You were mentioning marketing CEOs. Maybe they don't think they need to get into sales, but they realize after some time that that business doesn't come with customers. So we do need to get
Right.
into sales. And then we hire people and we have to sell them ideas. So sales, what I find, I was talking to a CEO of a training company yesterday that does a lot of IT training. And he said, you know what? That's the thing I never realized is that I had to go and sell. And so
Yeah.
I think sales as a skill is one of those things that we tend to wing. We just figure out, hey, and I think that's how I got into sales. They said, this guy's pretty talkative. He's relatively good with people. If we keep him in an office somewhere, he'll disrupt the other people in accounting and those sort of things. So let's get him out in sales and have him talk to people and maybe persuade them. And so I did that for a long time and actually did pretty well. I made some money doing that. Started a business doing that. But at some point when you are not growing, you've kind of tapped out what I call the X factor, this thing that whatever talent that you have, you've maxed that out. And so I went on a journey and I found Sandler. And short story is, it changed me. It changed my company. It changed my leadership. It changed my money. It kind of changed everything.
Yeah, true. Sales is kind of like the hidden or surprise job description for many entrepreneurs, whether you're an architect or a doctor or a hairdresser or a marketing agency owner. You you will be a surprise salesperson as soon as you want to go get new clients. But for me, especially as a female, we've talked about this a bit. The taste in our mouths when we see the traditional sales trainers, like
Oh,
the beating
right.
the chest, the alpha
Yes.
bro culture, take no prisoners vibe is so icky to a lot of people who would make amazing salespeople. And what
Right.
I
Right.
loved about your approach, which I later found out was kind of like the underpinnings of Sandler, is that it's so not that. So maybe tell us what attracted you to the Sandler method opposed to
Yeah.
every
Good.
other method. Yeah.
Yeah. Same thing. I'd been exposed to some sales training before. In fact, I've been sales trained to death, read a lot of books. At one point, started a division in a company that owned a major sales training company. Same thing. I'd been to the 2-day seminars. When I found Sandler, it was my first thought was, I don't need sales training. Why? How could I possibly need that? But Sandler was different for me in a couple of ways. One, it helped me put some labels on some things that maybe I was doing subconsciously, but unable to really share with someone else. So we were, growing, we were hiring people, we were building teams, and it became impossible for me to say, hey, just follow me around and do it like this, right? Like that didn't really work out. That's a terrible way to train people. The other thing that Sandler, showed me that would look different is it spent a lot of time on authentic conversations, right? When people are being their most authentic, when they're building the most trust, there are some psychological things that are happening. And, we all feel that naturally when we just click with someone, prospect,
Mhm.
potential employee, a teammate. We know when we just click. We also know that uncomfortable feeling of not clicking and when the conversation starts feeling inauthentic and we start to create this dynamic in sales where you have like the prospect who's up here and they're barking orders at you and you're down here trying to somehow serve that master and the whole conversation itself is just not authentic. Is that resonating?
My gosh, so much. Yeah, 100%.
And so what Sandler said is, you know, when you have an authentic conversation, there are some general, essential, or fundamental things at play. Why don't we tell you what those are? And then you can go out and do more of those on purpose. And for me, that just changed a lot. There were plenty of people that I naturally bonded with or naturally clicked with, but I really had no earthly idea why I didn't click with some people. And I think what a lot of professionals do is when they don't have that authentic conversation with someone, they commit this real mental foul. I call it bad prospect or bad potential employee, right? It's their fault we didn't click and we start believing that. So then we do nothing that is really within our control to change things. And so Sandler gave me a
Mm,
lot of tools and tactics and techniques for being able to do that. Not only
yeah.
me personally, but it gave me the opportunity to breathe that life into the company and its culture and those sort of things. Changed me a lot just as a client. And then somewhere along the way, um, I was doing a lot of traveling. I wanted to see my kids a little bit more. I decided I wanted to hang up the shiny shoes and get off of airplanes. Wanted to build spend some time within my network. At the time, I didn't really have much business outside of my or inside of my city of Kansas City, but I knew a lot of people, and so I thought, well, why don't I just build a business here? And so that's how I started a consulting firm, and then I eventually bought this Sandler business. And if we're gonna do this right, we'll probably buy a few more.
But I hope you do, because I think everybody should know who you are, who wants to sell anything. One thing I love about the Sandler method and your training in particular is it provides a really great framework for me, but I never feel like I have to become something I'm not. And you talk a lot about that. You're like, only say it if you can say it. That's kind of a Rickism, like you're very big on you have to tailor this suit to you.
Right.
And that I think gives your students a sense of freedom, but also like ownership. Like, oh, this is my sales process.
Mhm.
I'm kind of eating from the table of Sandler, taking this format, but I'm injecting my own personality to make
Sure.
it work. And that's very
Yeah.
different, don't you think, from so many of the bro culture, like,
Sure. Big important point. Before, I got involved in Sandler, sales training to me was let's spend a couple of days. Maybe we get really motivated. The motivation disappears around the time you get to your car or back on the plane, right? And
yeah,
and what was left over? Maybe a little bit of what I would call intellectual stimulation, but not real consideration or change, right? And to your point, if it's not authentic, here's what I won't do. I won't use it. I won't do it. And so everybody that is a what we would call a learner, whether you're a CEO of a business or a leader or a business development professional or a salesperson, we have a lot of people learning our methodology and tools and process and those sort of things at any given time regardless of what we're sharing with you, it's incumbent upon that learner to turn it 5 degrees to fit their world, make it authentic. And if
mhm.
we're not doing that, that partnership between the facilitator and the learner just doesn't work. Then it just becomes, a few weekly tips I get every week or something of that regard, which I don't find moves the needle very much.
Yeah. So a minute ago, you were talking about people you click with, people you don't click with, and you teach how to find common ground and how to do business with people that you may not click with in a
That's it.
natural way. So,
Mhm.
where does that fit into? We hear so much about sales is all about relationships. Sales is all about relationships. Does that contradict you can sell to people you don't click with? If you don't click with
Mhm.
them, do you not have a relationship?
Right.
I don't know, because I've always thought,
Yeah.
is sales all about relationships? Do I want it to be all about relationships? I don't know if I
Mhm.
do. What do you think
Yeah,
about that?
yeah. Yeah, we've explored that a lot as a firm, and, I think there's a few cliches that we hear from salespeople. One, people buy from people who they like, right? The other things they'll say is it's all about relationships. You know what? I will challenge both of those things. Being liked is great. Who doesn't wanna be liked? I mean, that makes a lot of sense, okay? But people buy from people who they like. Is that really true? I don't know. I can think of a handful of people right now that I really like, and Heather, maybe you run with a better crowd than me, but I can think of a handful of people that I like that I would never buy anything from. And
Sure,
so
sure.
there's a reason for that. And I think that reason is trust. And
Mm,
a lot of times that's a missing component when a salesperson says something like, "Oh, well, people buy from people who they like." Well, if that's the goal to be liked, so what do? We go out and we try to get everyone who looks, smells, or breathes like they could possibly be a prospect of mine. I try to get them to like me, right?
yeah,
And that produces a really tough psychological state. We call it high need for approval. That's when I want, my employer, my potential clients, my customers. I want them to like me even more than I want to get the business. And so just strategically, I think if you were waking up every day trying to be more liked, well, that would have some rough psychological impacts, but it would also be
yeah,
tough for building sales because sales is an engine, quite frankly, that we use to go to the bank, right? Like how do we take this to get to a good decision where there's money exchanged and value exchanged, right? Like how do we get there? And so if I inject something like my need to be approved of or like in between that, I'm going to mess up my system. So that would
mhm,
be one thing. The other part is, well, it's all about relationships. I will challenge that too. Um, Heather, I'm
please
sure
do.
you love your clients. I'm sure they're great people, okay? But there's probably a few in your client base that if it weren't for the business relationship, you probably wouldn't spend measurable time with them. Would that be fair to
Yeah,
say? Yeah. So
probably, yeah,
it's not really the relationship. I think it's the trust they have for you and really that mutual trust, the trust you have for them, right? The trust that you're gonna bring them a lot of value, and your trust that they're going to, keep participating in the relationship, writing you checks, whatever that part of it is.
totally. I agree 100%. And it is contrary to what I hear quite often,
Yeah,
that whole relationships are
totally
everything.
contrary.
But
Yeah.
it's like you think about it as a salesperson, especially if you're like an business owner who's also a salesperson. So now you have like 7 jobs. And you're like, how can I possibly develop a relationship? Because to me, a relationship means time is invested and emotional energy is invested. How am I possibly going to spread myself that thin to a
Right.
scaling number? Like my energy doesn't scale, my time doesn't scale. So it's like that relationship selling thing is meant to be like an encouragement to salespeople, like, oh, you can build a
Mhm.
relationship, right? Well, you can sell. But really it comes with a lot of limiting factors just kind of baked
Yes.
into it, like your
Yeah.
bandwidth. Yeah.
And, have I found people that I just absolutely like and adore through, my business relationships? Absolutely, okay? But when we make it the goal, then we mess up our overall system. The liking
Yeah.
part's more of the relationship part. Tons of relationships I've generated over the years through business, but that's more of a byproduct or a symptom of a well-run system more than it is a goal that, when I get up every day, I'm gonna try to find new friends, right? Like that to me, if you want to find new friends, there are much better ways to go about it.
totally, than going to a networking event and standing awkwardly with a half a beer for 2 hours.
Right, right. And, if I'm thinking about this, and I appreciate the question, if I'm thinking about it more, now that we know that people buy from people who they trust, right? The other thing we know, even scientifically and from a sociology standpoint, and just there's been lots of study about this, people trust. How do we build more trust? Well, people trust people who are more like them, right? And so what a lot of what we do in a sales training or coaching environment is we coach our salespeople to do what I would call mirror and matching, but do it authentically, right? I'm not talking about the old, even though that sometimes if we sat in front of each other and we started mirroring each other's gestures and those sort of things, that probably has some sort of minimal impact on our subconscious. But what I'm really talking about is, Heather, if you are the type of person who enjoys having what we would call small talk with people and talking about some of the things that aren't business, well, I wanna know that up front, and I wanna know it pretty quickly so that I can create that before business banter with you. But there are lots of people who don't appreciate that. They want, a solid commitment to the, time of the, appointment. Sometimes they really want a lot of details or a lot of, to follow a specific set of business rules and guidelines. And I have to be able to mirror and match that too, even if it's not really natural to my style. I think I've got business relationships with, people who truly are the type of person that if you ask them what time it is, well, they tell you how to build a clock, right? That is
Mhm.
about, and I happen to be a little bit different. I happen to be a little more big picture. I think about things more abstractly and not precisely, right? But I have to be aware of that if I ever want to build a business transaction with anybody who happens to be a little more comprehensive or compliant in that way.
Yeah, I love that. And I think one of the ways I apply that or think about it, because at its face, if you say mirror and match, it can seem like you want me to be a fraud.
Yeah.
Like, you want me to, like,
Yeah.
become that person, like, be some
Right.
psychological ninja, but I think of it more like hospitality,
That's it.
like, if you're coming over and I know you're allergic to dogs, I'm gonna put my dog away.
That's it.
If if you're coming over and I know you're a vegetarian, I'm not making steak for dinner.
Mhm.
It's in tune and hospitable so that you create that environment where good decisions can be made without getting that friction between the 2 people.
Right, right. I like the analogy of hospitality. Oh, if I'm thinking about this and if that, stranger were to come into your home, you're not going to say, "Hey, listen, I'm a dog person, the dogs live here, they're going to crawl over you." If I'm not, like that totally would make sense. And, I think salespeople have a little bit of trouble with that concept of, well, this sounds manipulative. Rick just told me, don't be friends with them and God forbid, let's not have a relationship. That's not what I'm saying first. But second, there is a bit of acting that has to happen. When you're being hospitable to someone, you are acting. When you are selling to someone, well, you are acting. And people have trouble with acting, especially the ones with the high need for approval. Well, they wear that like a badge, right? Like I am who I am, and that's all that I am. And I would challenge a salesperson who says that. I would say something like, well, why don't you think about all of those people you sell to? If it weren't for the business, transaction or relationship, would you, and I asked this before, would you want to spend measurable time with them? And the
Yeah.
answer is inevitably, well, no. So, of course you're acting because if you weren't acting, what would you be doing? Well, you'd be leaving the meeting. You'd be not showing up for it. You'd be picking something better to do, right? All of these things. So we're already acting to some degree. And, I think if you're going to act, well, you might as well act in a way that builds more trust, that does build more. I like that word hospitality.
Mhm. Yeah, you're touching on so many of, like, your I don't know if you wanna call it chapters or topics or, like, there's these kind of bodies of work within Sandler where
Sure.
you're learning how to Like, how do you assess what channel someone's on? What is their personality style? And you
Mhm.
teach really practical ways to identify that so that you can get to that place of kind of the mind meld and mirror and matching.
Mhm. Mhm.
So, yeah, I mean, you're talking about DISC, like DISC profile. Would
Sure,
you say that's
sure, we
one of the
utilize
like,
DISC.
yeah, is that one of the core like tenets of Sandler or where does that fit in?
I think it's one of the first things we can teach salespeople that can be really effective in the field in the sense that not and I think everyone probably has taken a DISC profile or something of that regard. If you're in a profession for any amount of time, you've probably done that. But I think it stops short at this is what it says about you. I think you can build some skills around that where you can start recognizing and observing how people most want to be communicated with if you are if you're really in tune with it, if you have a framework for it, if you have a process for it, then you can build those mirroring and matching skills.
Mhm.
Yeah, and so
Yeah.
that's just one of the millions of challenges, or ways we might help a sales professional's life become easier, uh, and that's what I think any good business does, right? Is you try to make that day-to-day life they have more, easier in some way, and I know your business does that. I'm infinitely curious, though. You have all of these, marketing professionals, and some of them probably when they were little, they told their parents when their mom and dad said, "Hey, what do you wanna be when you grow up?" I bet none of them said salesperson,
Right.
but I do bet a lot of them have recognized that sales skills end up being pretty indispensable and not really optional, right? So what are they telling you? Like, where do they see challenges, roadblocks, opportunities, those sort of things?
Ooh, so I think most agencies that I am aware of really, really struggle with sales because especially agencies who have a creative bend to their work,
Mhm, mhm.
I think maybe it comes along with the creative mindset or kind of the artistic type. You really think the quality of your work will attract great clients, and should be no need for me to sell. Didn't
Right.
you see this website I built? Didn't you see that brand I consulted on? Isn't that enough? So I think there's that aspect. And then within a lot of agencies, it's a process, it's like a systems and process thing too, where that agency owner knows if I let someone else sell for me, they could change the shape of my agency in a pretty
Mhm,
short period of time.
mhm.
And so they like to maintain the control of the sales, but yet are spread too thin and
Right.
really don't have much of a sales process or system. They're kind of counting solely on the agency owner, creative extraordinaire persona.
Mhm.
And even if then at that point, even if they wanted to hire a salesperson, good luck transferring that torch to someone else.
Sure.
So I think it's kind of all of those
Yeah,
factors.
I'm hearing a lot in what you're saying. One thing that I'm hearing is, you have that agency owner who eventually maybe wants to hire a salesperson, and the problem with that is that the owner or the CEO, they'll sell like an owner or a CEO, and that that system, that process, that winging it creativity, let me dazzle you with my brilliance type of or my passion or my commitment, that type of sales strategy just isn't translatable to an employee. And so that can be really difficult. Sometimes, and gosh, I know this is shocking, but that when you do walk the earth thinking that, I can dazzle people with my brilliance and therefore they will buy from me. The challenge with that is there are lots of prospective clients out there who kind of see you and your industry as sort of the same. And so it's awfully
Um,
hard to differentiate until they become a client. And so we utilize a sales strategy or a sales process with our companies for that purpose, to differentiate. What's weird about differentiation or when people buy from you, they don't necessarily see the differentiation in the statements that you make, right? Here are my here are my awards and here are my features and here are my benefits. That's not the differentiator, and unfortunately, that's what a lot of people think differentiates them. It's not in those statements that you make, it's in the questions you ask, and,
Yeah.
we spend a lot of time with our clients on asking really good questions, questions that uncover problems, concerns, and challenges, but also questions that help our clients self-discover, right? Or our prospects self-discover. And if there's one thing that I know about selling, it's this: people never believe what you tell them,
Mhm.
right? I could tell you all day long that, Sandler, has a track record. Our particular firm, Quantum Consulting, we've done the data on this. If you engage in our training, coaching, and development, we have a success rate that shows the average client increases their top line revenue by 54% within 2 years. I could tell people that till I'm blue in the face, but they're not going to believe me. And then I
Mhm.
could show them, right? I could show them charts or graphs or websites or videos, and people sometimes believe that, right? And that's why we do marketing, right? Like we do a nice video, or we might share some content because sometimes people believe that, and that's good. Often people believe what their friends tell them, referrals. But, what's shocking to a lot of people is the one thing that people believe 100% of the time, it's the story they tell themselves, right?
Mhm.
And so if you don't have a sales strategy or offense that creates room so that they can self-discover their need to buy from you, you're missing out on it. You're really setting yourself up for a lot of huffing and puffing with mediocre or maybe less than mediocre results.
Yeah, you hit on differentiator, and in the marketing world, we talk about that all the
Yeah.
time. And most business owners have done some kind of differentiation discovery, usually with a marketing person or agency.
Yes.
And those differentiators might be expressed at the brand level in the
Mhm.
website, in content, but it's so important to know that there are differentiators in the sales process, like the questions you're asking prospects, that set you apart from the way your competitors' salespeople sound. So
Yes.
it's taking it down to the street level of one-to-one communication when the rubber meets the road and your sales guy is in front of your ideal prospect.
Right.
What is in their toolbox? Are you just going to go tell them to read your website? Well, what if your competitor's salesperson is Sandler trained, knows
Right.
the right questions to ask,
Mhm.
and is just a little bit sharper that day than your sales guy? Like, it makes all the difference. And I can say, like, my own sales boosted tremendously after working with you the first time a few years ago. To be pointed, my close rate went from 40 to 90%. I thought 40% was,
Congratulations.
well, thanks. And I say that humbly because I probably applied, I don't know, 20% is generous. 20% of what I learned from you, I applied, and just that change made that difference for me. Because I mean, it's the material. I find it's not complicated, but it's like going to the gym. It's not hard to lift the thing. It's getting the reps in. It's the consistency over and over again. But it's also, and you talk about this a lot too, you've got all these systems and training modules and different things that you focus on. And it's not just so that Sandler has a shtick, right? And
Right.
we're going to say the thing the way Uncle Sandler says it, right?
Right, right.
It's the byproduct is now you have a shared language within your company to talk about sales
That's
so
it.
that,
Yeah.
yeah.
And there are a lot of companies that come to us and they're like, "Well, we just need a better culture, right?" And we have a set of coaching and tools and programming around this concept of building culture on purpose. We actually call it culture on purpose because I guess we're not as creative as some of your marketing people. But
I think it's fine.
When we are developing that culture on purpose, one of the things we first think about is what makes a great culture. We have to define what is a great culture and what's common to great cultures that we know about, right? Throughout history is they do have somewhat of a common language, right? Now they might have dialects that differ, region to region. Maybe, if I'm thinking of like Canada, they have people that are speaking French and some speaking English and those sort of things. But there's still a common language that's spoken, right?
Uh-huh.
Um, and and we find is the more that companies really focus on that, that the tighter the and better the culture becomes. Now, that's not the be all end all, but just having a way to everything from successes to challenges to everything in between and label them roughly the same way really helps, a company, which is really a community, right? And we know when we get groups of people together, we don't each of those people don't just add value to the company or production. They actually multiply it. And that's something really cool about human beings. 1 plus 1 doesn't equal 2 when it comes to human beings and ideas, right?
That's so true. Yeah, it also elevates the sales team and the sales culture into a more professional status, I think, when you do have that shared language. I think of
Mhm.
like, when you take chemistry, the first thing you do is you learn the nomenclature of
Right.
chemistry, and other
Mhm.
disciplines are similar. Music, right? You learn to read the
Correct.
music, speak the
Yep.
language of music. So any like rigorous discipline comes with its own nomenclature. And when you can inject that level of professionalism into your sales team, guess what? The culture shifts. They become more professional, more potent in their selling.
That's it. That's it.
Yeah. Okay. So shifting gears a little bit, I looked
Okay.
up some questions. I have some sources.
Okay.
Common questions just salespeople on the street are asking a
Yep.
lot
Mhm.
right now.
Yeah.
So these are going to be pretty softballs for you, but take them however far you want to go. So sales can be a grind, right? Like we've all
Sure.
seen Death of a Salesman.
Right,
It's a
right.
famous play. No
Yeah,
Willy Loman's over here, but
for
I
sure.
mean, it can be a very soul crushing job. Um, been there. And like low response rates, sold meetings, you can kind of just get your ass kicked out here if you're not
Yes.
careful.
Yes.
High pressure. How do you help or suggest that salespeople stay motivated in light of
Mm.
those factors?
Right, right.
Help
It's
us.
interesting. I was just working with a group this morning on that very question of, adverse events in selling, right? Sales is a failure driven exercise, right? We're hearing
So
no a
true.
lot. We're getting no shows for meetings. We have maybe not in your client base, maybe not in some of the people who are listening right now, but we have had reports of people telling us that the prospects sometimes lie to us. Um, Yes, I know, this is crazy. This is
Shocking.
crazy. And so, you now if you're really looking at that objectively, you think, "Well, why on earth would you wanna sign up for something where people lie to you, they ghost you, like, you know, cancel their commitments with you, and that is someone who's hyper focused on what I would call the drama because it is dramatic, right? Like, if I focused on someone telling me no and I let that reach the rest of my day, I'd be focused on a piece of drama, an emotional, difficulty, right? I'd be focused on that missed appointment. I'd be focused on the drama of that. And what we find to be motivating, okay, because that's demotivating. If I focus on the drama, then that is demotivating. And so now what do I say to myself? Well, how do I get back out there? How do I get back on the horse? How do I make some appointments? Well, I got to pick up the phone. I got to go talk to people. These are all behaviors that I really don't want to do because now I've associated that with drama. You see how that works? And so this is why we get things like call reluctance and that professional defensiveness that happens when maybe we do talk to a prospect or And heck, we have I've seen salespeople that, maybe they have 10, 20, 30 years of experience, or at least that's what people tell us, that it's 30 years of experience. But what we come to discover is they basically just had 30 of the same year, right? They're still kind of stuck in that drama part. And I think of I think of people like that, and I think, well, that's a person that generally approaches their profession this way. If I feel like it, I'll do it, right? And so if you just take something out of the salesperson's bag of tricks, well, one of the things we have to do, we have to prospect. And in some sales, we have to make the dreaded cold call, for crying out loud, right? I It's hard for me to find people who would really love to make phone calls, right? Or love to make cold calls, right? Most people don't, because it is that failure driven business. But if you don't do cold calls, or you don't do prospecting calls, well, what you're really telling the earth is, or the world, is that I'll do it if I feel like it. Trouble is, don't feel like it. So what we do is we change that dynamic, our perspective on that, and we change the focus. Because if we can take the focus from the drama to the data, okay, now what we find is that it actually creates more motivation, and here's why. You mentioned exercise before, right? Well, Heather, what if you just exercised like once a year? Spent the whole weekend doing it, right?
That sounds
two
like
two
my
day
style.
intensified. Well, we approach sales training that way sometimes, right? Like
I'll
two
run for
days
my life.
intensified once a year. What kind of results do you think you would get if that was your training regimen for for physical activity?
I might have a heart attack.
Yeah, it wouldn't be very good, okay? But if we do wanna master our physiology in some way, whether we do cross training or running or weight training or Pilates or whatever it is, well, there are a few components that we know we need to do. We need to do it daily. It has a set number of behavior or goals that we wanna accomplish, right? I wanna do this many reps with this many sets, and so I accomplish those things, and some days, gosh, it does feel like a grind. I didn't feel like doing it, right? Ever happened to you by chance? Like you get up in the morning and it's time to, do your exercise program and you don't feel like doing it? Yeah, happens to me too, right? But if you ever, and this is the way like motivation hits. So if you were to like hit the snooze on the alarm, don't go do the workout, how do you feel after that?
Mm, well, at a deep level, like I can't trust myself.
Yeah. Yeah, most people feel worse, okay? So, the alarm clock's going, "Man, I'm not doing it's too cold outside," whatever it happens to be. I make the excuse for myself, and I hit the snooze button, right? And, I don't go on the workout. Most people feel worse after that. But if you ever, and this is
Yeah.
kinda like me on the daily, you wake up, it's 5 AM, you're supposed to go do your workout, you don't feel like it, but you go ahead and do it anyway. You had something like that recently?
Yeah, you feel like a winner.
Yeah, you feel great, don't you? And that's the difference in, I think, what happens in the psychology of salespeople, right? And that's a
Yeah.
salesperson. So if I'm comparing the belief system, one is I'll do it if I feel like it. The other one is if I do it, I will feel like it. And that to me is just
Mhm.
fundamental.
Yeah.
Every every profession, every practice, everything has things that, are intrinsically motivating to do, that you want to get up and do them, and it's got a few things you don't. But if you engage in the behavior, if you actually believe, if I do it, I'll feel like it. Sales is like that. If I do it, I'll feel like it. If I set 27 appointments, well, my math tells me that 4 will cancel. So when that cancel comes, now it just becomes a moment of data instead of drama. I'm expecting those 4 to cancel. This is just one of
Yeah.
them, right? Your data tells you that in order to get a yes, I need to get 9 no's, right? Like whatever your data is telling you, so that when you hear the no, that doesn't become drama. That becomes data for you. And
Yeah.
it's much more motivating, and it's much more stress reducing to focus on the data part of it. Is that helpful do you think
Super.
that's helpful for the people that asked you the question?
I think so. I think
Okay.
it is. I think it's important, especially young or up and coming salespeople, new salespeople, to surround themselves with winners, whether it's in
Agreed.
their own company or in a sales training room, like, because you're so right. What you focus on is what you feel. And if you're focusing on the no's and the losses, and maybe you're brand new and you have no pipeline and you've made 100 phone calls and nothing
Right.
happened, what
Right.
else are you going to focus on than the no? That's all that's happening right
Mhm.
now. But if you're
Right.
surrounded by people who just got a win yesterday, you can kind of co opt that and I'm going to focus on that. The
Right.
win over there, kind of like bringing that energy to yourself.
Mhm.
Okay, so another question.
Yes.
Salespeople can waste a ton of time on bad fit leads and prospects. How do
Yeah.
you help them manage their time better so they can be more productive? Time management,
Right. Right.
huge.
Yeah. Yeah. I think most of the time what we end up coaching them to do is have a rock solid ironclad system for qualifying. Okay.
Yes, you do.
And well defined. And, when I first got into selling, what was qualified? Well, I did a lot over the phone. So if they were breathing on the other end of the phone, then I would treat them as qualified, right? And I knew from when I was a little kid, my parents said, "Hey, don't give up, a little engine that could," all of those things. So I would just huff and puff and try and give them all the features and benefits in the world until they told me no, right? Well, that's not a qualifying system or a methodology. What we believe is that before we can determine if someone's qualified or not, well, we need to know first, do they have a problem that we can fix, right? We call that
Mhm.
pain, and we teach our clients to really figure out how to really help that prospect self discover how much pain they're actually in, because nobody's telling you the pain up front usually. And then, so do you have a problem? And then we want to find out, is this even a problem in the world of priorities and things that you have? Is it a problem that's even big enough to fix? And if it's not that, if I can't hear that it's a problem and it's big enough to fix, right? Then I got no business asking them the next set of questions, which is it big enough to fix right now, right? Or is this one we just kick down the road? And so I got to figure out that problem, right? Can we establish there's a problem, it's big enough to fix, and it's big enough to fix right now? And once I do that, I got to figure out, are they willing and able to invest what's necessary? And so what's necessary? Sometimes it's time. Hey, do you want to meet with me again? Can you invest the time to do that? Right? Sometimes it's money, right? So, hey, I got to sell you something in order to do this, right? And so sometimes it's also money. Sometimes it's just attention. Okay. I would tell you, most of the groups we work with are professional sales. They're calling at the upper levels of companies, the owners of companies, the C-suite, those sort of things. The most, the most difficult part of the investment in those products is not the money. Okay, the money is what it is. At some level, it's a math problem. It's the attention. Can you spend the attention fixing this problem in your company? And that I think is a big key to B2B sales. Then are you willing and able to invest what's necessary to fix it? And then here's where a lot of salespeople really screw up. They don't figure out how they're going to make a decision. They're great usually at asking who makes the decision. Let me go find that decision maker because I don't want to waste my time, right? But I find that our ways of obtaining who, what, when, where, why, and how they're going to make that decision, I find that is usually not as well thought through, dialed out, common language, part of the process. And so for my money, I'd want salespeople to focus on that more than they would like, hey, how do I get better qualified inbound? The inbound lead isn't necessarily qualified, and we know that. Okay, your job's to qualify them. Your job is to do that before
Mhm.
you see
That's
any
a
presentation of mine or proposal or solution. We have to establish, is there a reason to even do this? So that's where I would go. Is that helpful? Do you think that's helpful to?
I think so. Yeah,
Okay.
you talk a ton about qualifying, and
Yeah.
it is it's the answer to, you know, the follow-up, the just circling back. the thought I'd
Yeah.
touch base that you're sending 3, 4, 5, 6
Mhm.
weeks and months after the initial conversation. Like, I think the reason you emphasize it so much is to avoid that are all time wasters that happen
Right.
after that sales conversation.
Exactly. I mean,
Yeah.
most professionals aren't looking for extra stuff to do, right? You weren't looking for extra stuff to do when we decided to do some sales training together, right? And so, but you also shared something with me that you did put in the time, effort, and energy because you had a business problem you wanted to solve. You were sending out a lot of proposals. You're closing 40% of those, right? And so what were the answers to getting more sales? Well, send out a whole bunch more proposals? Well,
Mhm.
at some level, that didn't make sense. And so my guess is, yeah, sure, your close percentage got up to 90%, but you probably made a lot less proposals. Is that fair?
I think so. I think so. Yeah, I
Because
don't
your
remember
qualifying
the
got better.
exact numbers, but
Yeah.
yeah, my qualifying got much better. I stopped sending quotes to people
Yes.
that weren't qualified, spending an
Mhm.
hour and a half building a quote and another hour
Yeah.
compiling a thesis for why you should buy this
Right.
thing, all
Right.
without ever qualifying really. And so I started using your tools and tips on qualifying and then leading the sales
Mhm.
process. Go figure.
Yeah.
Controlling the sales process. Like, I'm not sending you this quote until we have a call on the calendar to review it together because I
Yes.
don't know if it matters enough to you. You get a lot of emails. My guess is you don't open half of them. I'd hate for my hour and
Mhm.
a half quote to be one of those that you never open.
Right. Right. I mean, I can't tell you how many times personally I've sent a proposal that, in retrospect, I realize they weren't ever going to consider it, right? So why did I stay up all night? Why did I miss the kids' ball game? Why did I go all the way 400 miles on that airplane? Like whatever those things happen to be, why did I do that? And the answer is poor qualifying. Most people don't want to hear that, but that is the answer.
Yeah, it's so true. And it saves a ton of time when you take the time to learn to qualify. For sure.
Yes, agree.
Okay, another question. This one is, let's see, a bit longer. It seems the prospecting game is only getting more complex and expensive. Cold email blasts don't
Mhm.
work like they used to. I can attest. And many
Yeah,
salespeople spend a lot of time crafting the perfect message to their prospects, only to be
right.
ignored.
Yep.
What prospecting strategies do you recommend and what's different about them that creates success? So, like before
Mhm.
that first sales conversation ever happens, you're scrappy salesperson, you need calls on the calendar. What are some
Sure.
strategies you're recommending today?
Great question. Great question. I actually love this question. So, most people that come to me with a question like that, through some conversation, we determine that they didn't just fall off the sales truck, right? Like they've got a career. They've done this for a while. And if they've done it for a while, then they probably had some success. They probably have some people who are clients of theirs, who've been clients of theirs for a very long time. And what I find is, strangely enough, instead of talking to those clients about people in their world, in their network, in another division in their company, at another location, who would really appreciate an introduction to them, we're running around trying to compete with noise, trying to come up with that right message in a sea of messages to see if we can find someone that'll talk to us. And that to me is perplexing. I get it though. I at some level I'm wired that way, right? And so first things first, I would want, a good salesperson not to walk the earth thinking that, well, if I do a really good job through word of mouth, I'll get introductions. Well, that kind of belief system is about enough to keep the lights on, so to speak, right? Like we'll get word of mouth and that's fine. But what I'm talking about is a deliberate engine for generating introductions to people. So, something like, hey, Heather, if you're a client of mine, structurally, I would put in places where we talked at some sort of regular basis, be it monthly, quarterly, whatever. And we had a meeting, and we'll call that a strategic account management meeting. And I want to know a few things. One, are you still committed to the goals that you said you were when we started this interaction, right? Like, has anything changed? Do you have new goals? Like, what are those? I want to know those things. I want to know, Heather, let's go back to 5 years ago when we started working together. What were some of your reasons, right? And I'd want to know what those were. As you refresh my memory, you're also going to self-discover some of those challenges that now you've gotten a lot more effective at overcoming. And I'd ask you questions around that, right? And then I'd say, "Well, Heather, how is it now?" Like, and let's just do this real time. Heather, now that you've, been involved in our firm and Sandler and now in a couple of different businesses, one you started yourself, are you glad that you did it?
Absolutely.
What's really changed for you?
The biggest, I would say, clarity, like
Okay.
the ability to kind of like codify what I'm
Mhm.
doing.
Mhm.
And now that I'm a business owner, confidence that I could teach someone else to also do it, which is
Right.
huge.
Yeah, yeah. No, that's great, and I appreciate you sharing all those things. It's actually, I love the business success of it all when we get clients that do well, and certainly our revenue growth over time has been good because of that. But the real reason I got in the business is to hear business owners tell me stuff like you just did, right? And so I appreciate you sharing it. It makes me it makes me wonder, can I ask you a favor? I don't suppose maybe there's another entrepreneurial business owner or maybe someone you've worked with before, or maybe one of those clients that you have who would really appreciate an introduction to my firm so that, they could get some of those changes too. Do you think you might know someone like that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so I just
I can do
demonstrated
that.
shortly
Yeah,
how that conversation starts. Now, most people will stop and, because you'll probably say, well, yeah, I probably do. If I think of anybody, I'll send them your way.
right.
And, you know, if you have a process for it, though, if you have a system, well, a couple of things would happen here. I'd say, hey, Heather, can we take 10 minutes and can we just brainstorm on who they might be? Doesn't mean they're going to be a client of mine. Doesn't even mean you're really going to introduce me, but can we brainstorm a little bit? I'd really like to hear your input here. Right. And so then I would take this giant world of possible people you could introduce to me, which is perplexing to human beings. We can't
Yeah.
think in terms of that many. And so we're just going to help narrow it down. And I'm going to ask you questions. Who else do you know that started a business in the last 2 years? I might ask you a question around like, talk to me about a few of your clients. Who are your best ones? Who would you like to have more like, right? And during that time, I'm going to ask like, well, who owns that company? I don't suppose they'd be open to a conversation with you just because you asked them, would they? Right? And so we're gonna brainstorm that together. And I got to tell you, so many salespeople are reluctant to do something like that, and I've always found that weird, even for myself. Like, I sometimes I'm reluctant to do it, and that's me not recognizing what's inherent in human beings is we do like to help others.
Yeah. And we also, I think I probably learned this from you. We like to sell ourselves on things we've already bought.
Yes,
Like, I don't know if you could think of
we
you
like to
probably have a better way of,
rationalize our decision. Yeah, for
yeah,
sure.
rationalize our decision. So if I'm
Yeah.
like, if I'm giving myself a pat on the back for the decision I made to work with you, however many years ago,
Hmm.
that's a good moment for me.
Right.
But you're right, salespeople and business owners don't like to like, it feels like it can even feel more stressful than prospecting a perfect stranger. I have an idea of why that is. Why do you think?
I think
Why
you
do you
nailed
think?
it. People like to, share, um, a great decision they've made. They like to share. I mean, how often do you like, I keep like a running mental list of just stuff that I paid maybe less than $100 for that had a lot of value to me, right? And I give it away as
Yeah,
gifts.
that's fun.
I found this sea salt that I've given to people, and this is a $1.85 bag of sea salt, right? Like but it's the right kind of flakiness and it's just really cool,
Nice.
and so I I'll give them the life-changing sea salt for a gift, right? Like, and that's me saying, "Hey, I want you to experience this thing that I have that I've found to be really cool."
Mhm.
There's a, this I'm a foodie, I'm a kitchen guy, so there's always, like, a kitchen tool of some sort that I wanna share with somebody, like, "Hey, I found this. This is a really great thing. This'll change your habitual structure," or little productivity hacks, like, I love these rocket books, for instance, right? And I love sharing with people, you know, what that is, and I'll tell
Mhm.
somebody, "Hey, I have trouble keeping things organized and I got, I used to have stacks upon stacks of legal pads." Well, these rocket books, you just, wave it over with your phone and then you can erase it like a whiteboard and it keeps all those notes for you and organizes them. It's great, right?
Yeah,
And that's me wanting to just naturally share a decision that's made my life easier, and I'd like to go help other people make their life easier.
totally.
And that's natural to
Yeah,
human beings. Yeah,
you're right. I mean, that's what your happy customers want to do
that's it.
for your business. But I think the head trash in the business owner or the salesperson
Mhm.
that keeps them from going and getting that super valuable data from that
Right,
customer. It's
right.
like fear of rocking the boat. I don't wanna
Yep.
I don't wanna remind them of the deal they did with me because what if there's something they haven't told me? Like, what if they actually didn't
Yeah,
like it, and
that's a
now
great point.
yeah.
Yeah,
Do
and
you
I've
see
struggled
that?
with that too, but I've always landed here. Maybe you have as well. I'd rather know if they regretted the decision they made. I would rather know while we're sitting here talking together than, maybe get an email that we're not going to renew our commitment or whatever that happens to be. I would much rather
Yeah.
have the conversation now. And that comes
That's
from some experience.
yeah, and that it almost seems like that's the same, like, spirit or the root of that, that whatever you just said, like, the desire to want to know the truth
Yes.
is the same as in your qualifying. Like,
Correct.
my desire is to find the truth. Are you qualified
Mhm.
for what I have? Not to be in a delusion,
Right.
right? Like the delusion of you look like a prospect, I'm going to treat you like a prospect. I'm going to spend all this
Mhm.
time. And then you look like a happy customer. I'm going to treat you like a happy customer. I'm not going to ask for referrals and risk being
Mhm.
wrong about you being
Right.
happy. It's like just choose to know the damn truth
Mhm.
of the matter. Are you a happy customer?
Yeah.
Are you a prospect?
And there are lots of natural human forces at play. We talked about that
Sure.
concept of business pain, right? People inherently are pain avoiders. That's why, so many salespeople have trouble talking to other business professionals about the pain they're having in their business. Like it's uncomfortable for them sometimes because naturally we're pain avoiders. It's uncomfortable for prospects to talk about it, right? And what's interesting is when you do give someone a good solution or a good service or a good product, people being pain avoiders, well, they forget what caused them to do it in the first place. So to me, it would be very logical to place in some time to have a conversation where we remind each other why we decided to do this in the first place. And so,
Mhm.
if we're not doing that as salespeople on the regular, well, it's gonna be tough to keep a client for 3, 5, 7, 10 years unless we can remind each other why we decided to do this in the first place.
Yeah, that's the relationship,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's the relationship.
That's the trust
Mhm.
relationship. You may not be going and playing golf every weekend with that
Right.
client, or you may not even see them hardly ever,
Mhm.
but the ability to have those truthful conversations, that's where the relationship is, I think.
That's it. That's
Yeah,
it.
I love it. Very cool. Well, this has been so much fun, Rick. Like,
Yeah,
I love
great.
talking to
Yeah.
you. I
I
know you
appreciate
talk
you
this
inviting me. I'll do it
yeah,
anytime. Yeah.
Yeah, you're a rock star. Highly recommend anybody who's got a sales team, big or small, mature or neophyte, bring them to Rick's dojo because he's the real deal. I've also been to other sales trainers, read the books, watched, I don't even know how many, probably thousands of YouTube videos and talks. Sure,
Sure.
I hear things that I like and I pick up things that resonate. Um, but if you really want a professional system, um, for how to engage with prospects, how to conduct sales calls, how to close deals, how to keep customers happy long term, and have truthful conversations to grow your business, Rick, for real.
Wow, that was impressive. Um,
From the
you
heart,
know,
man.
and that was not a paid sponsorship either. That was fantastic. I appreciate it.
No.
I'd like the opportunity to reciprocate. We just started working with you in our firm, and I would tell you that you're really changing how we help other people know about the great things that we do, which is really challenging for any small or mid-sized business, right? So,
Yeah.
yeah, and I'm really looking forward to seeing a lot of these things pay off and grow and bear fruit and all of that good stuff. So we definitely appreciate you and your team.
Awesome. Awesome. Great partner, great relationship. We
Yeah,
should cook together sometime because I'm a
sounds good to me. I'm ready to do it.
rookie home chef as
I'll
well.
bring you
But
some salt.
yeah, until next time, I'm Heather. That's Rick. We'll see you later.